The air on the movie set was thick with a buzzing energy, a whirlwind of cables, towering lights, and a symphony of hushed commands. 10-year-old Billy Jenkins stood in the middle of it all, a small island in a vast, unpredictable sea. His script, clutched in sweaty hands, felt heavier than a brick. This was it. His first major film role, and not just any role, but one opposite the biggest star in the world, Elvis Presley. Billy was a natural talent, a kid who could memorize lines faster than anyone and embody emotions with a depth that surprised even seasoned directors. He loved acting, truly loved, but there was one thing, one terrifying, unblinking enemy that turned his heart to ice and his stomach into a churning mess of nerves. The camera. Today, the enemy was bigger than usual. Not one camera, but two massive Panavision cameras mounted on dollies, their lenses like giant hungry eyes pointed directly at him. Crew members dressed in drab work clothes scurried around like busy ants, their voices a low murmur that amplified in Billy's ears. The director, a stern-faced man named Mr. Henderson, clapped his hands, a sound like a gunshot in the sudden quiet. "All right, Billy, you're up," Mr. Henderson boomed, his voice resonating through the cavernous soundstage. "We're going for a close-up on your reaction, just pure, innocent shock, followed by a flicker of fear. Can you give me that?" Billy swallowed hard. He nodded, trying to appear confident, but his legs felt like jelly. He walked to his marker-taped percent on the floor. The lights, blindingly bright, clicked on, bathing him in an unnatural glare. He squinted, his eyes stinging. He could feel the heat on his face. Okay, background action and camera rolling. A whirring sound filled the air, the unmistakable hum of film moving through machinery. Camera lenses seemed to expand, growing larger, more menacing. Billy's breath hitched, his chest tightened. He tried to remember his lines, to remember the feeling of shock, but all he could focus on was that giant cyclops eye staring into his soul. It felt invasive, judging, ready to expose. "Action, Mr. Henderson," yelled. Billy stood frozen. His jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. His eyes, wide and unblinking, started to well up. A single tear escaped, tracing a hot path down his cheek. Then another, and another. His lips trembled, unable to form a sound. He didn't look shocked or fearful in character. He just looked genuinely, terribly afraid. "Cut." Mr. Henderson's voice was sharp, edged with exasperation. He rubbed his temples. "Billy, what happened? We just talked about this. You were great in rehearsal." Billy's mother, Sarah, rushed forward, her face etched with worry. She knelt beside him, stroking his hair. "It's okay, honey. Take a deep breath." But it wasn't okay. Billy felt a hot flush of shame creep up his neck. He knew he was holding up the entire production. He could feel the eyes of the crew on him, silent judgments. He hated this feeling more than anything. From the shadows leaning against a prop saloon door, a figure watched. He was dressed in a pristine white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, and dark trousers. His dark hair was perfectly coiffed, a slight sneer on his lip that somehow still looked good. It was Elvis Presley. He had been watching the scene unfold. A faint smile on his face, but as he saw the raw terror on the child's face, the smile faded. He saw the genuine distress. Not an actor's, performing. But he remembered the early days, the awkwardness, the pressure. He remembered how unnatural it felt to be under such scrutiny. This wasn't just stage fright. This was something deeper. Mr. Henderson sighed, walking over to Billy and his mom. "Billy, we need to get this shot. We're losing light. Are you all right?" Billy shook his head, unable to speak. The tears flowed freely now. He just wanted to disappear. He wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Camera still seemed to be staring, even though it wasn't rolling. It was a silent, mocking presence. Elvis pushed off the wall. He didn't walk towards them yet, just observed a moment longer. He saw the desperation in the director's eyes, the helplessness in the mother's, and he saw the profound, raw fear in the child. A strange idea, an unconventional one, began to form in the back of his mind. He knew a thing or two about getting people to relax, to forget their troubles, even if just for a moment. He just had to figure out how to apply it to a terrified 10-year-old in a hungry camera lens. The next day on set was a repeat of the first. Perhaps even worse, the pressure had intensified. Everyone was trying to be patient, but the unspoken urgency hung in the air, like a heavy curtain. Billy tried, he really did. He took deep breaths, he closed his eyes, and imagined himself in his own backyard. But the moment Mr. Henderson yelled, "Action!" and the cameras began their hungry whir, he froze. Another take, another failure. Tears welled up instantly, betraying his determination. "Okay, everyone, 15 minutes, Billy. Why don't you take a walk with your mom? Clear your head." Billy's mother led him away from the set towards the quieter corners of the soundstage. He felt utterly defeated. He was ruining everything. Elvis, who had been practicing a guitar riff in his trailer, watched them go. He saw the slump in Billy's small shoulders, the way his mother kept whispering reassuring words. This wasn't going to fix itself with a walk. He put down his guitar. He walked over to the edge of the set, where Billy was sitting on an upturned prop box, picking at a loose thread on his trousers. His mom was talking softly on a payphone nearby, probably to Billy's father. Elvis approached cautiously, not wanting to startle the boy. He wasn't in his movie costume yet, just a casual shirt and jeans. He looked more like a regular person, albeit a very handsome one. "Hey there, son," Elvis said, his voice surprisingly soft, a low rumble that was nothing like the booming presence he had on stage. Elvis offered a sympathetic look on his face. Billy nodded again, a small whimper escaping his throat. "Yeah, I remember those kinds of days," Elvis continued, looking out at the set as if remembering something far away. "Used to get 'em all the time when I was just starting out. The lights, the cameras. Felt like a whole army was staring at you, judging every little thing." Billy's head snapped up. He hadn't expected Elvis Presley to admit to anything like that. He thought stars were born fearless. "You too?" Billy whispered, his voice hoarse. Elvis chuckled, a low, easy sound. "Son, everyone gets nervous. It's part of the game. The trick is to find a way to make those nerves work for you, or at least get out of your way." He paused, then pulled something out of his pocket. It was a shiny silver dollar. He held it up. "Want to see something cool?" Billy's eyes widened slightly. Elvis slowly closed his hand around the coin, then opened it. The coin was gone. Billy gasped. Elvis grinned, wiggling his fingers. Then with a flourish he reached behind Billy's ear and pulled the coin out. Billy let out a small, surprised giggle. It was barely a sound, a puff of air. But it was the first genuine sign of light on his face all day. Elvis winked. "Pretty neat, huh? Been practicing that one for years. Always a good way to break the ice." He did the trick again, slower this time, so Billy could try to follow. Billy leaned in, completely engrossed for a few moments, forgetting the cameras, the crew, and the heavy weight of his fear. Billy, still a bit dazed, shook it. Elvis's grip was firm, but gentle. "Now about those cameras," Elvis began, his voice dropping slightly. "They ain't so bad once you get to know 'em. Think of them like a really big ear, listening to your story. Or maybe a big eye that wants to see what you're feeling. They don't judge, Billy." Billy looked towards the dark lenses of the cameras, still and silent for the break. They still looked scary, but Elvis's words had taken a tiny bit of their power away. Just a tiny bit. "Sometimes," Elvis continued, leaning back, "you just gotta fool 'em. Make 'em think you're not scared even when you are. Ever tried making a funny face at something that scares you?" Billy shook his head. "Well, maybe you should try it sometime," Elvis said with a conspiratorial grin. "Just between you and me could be our little secret. Might just make 'em laugh and then they ain't so scary anymore." The director's voice cut through the air. "All right, everyone. 5 minutes back to set. Billy, you ready?" Billy tensed up again, but this time he caught Elvis's eye. Elvis gave him a small, reassuring nod, a silent message of encouragement. Billy still felt the knot in his stomach, but the complete terror had lessened, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, Elvis was right. Maybe there was a trick to this. Problem, as everyone on set quickly learned, wasn't just a matter of nerves. It was a genuine phobia. Billy would do beautifully in rehearsals, delivering his lines with perfect emotion, moving with natural grace. But the moment the cameras rolled, it was like a switch flipped. He'd freeze, his face contorting in terror, often leading to tears. The schedule was tight, the budget immense, and frustration was beginning to bubble beneath the surface. Elvis had tried talking to Billy, the magic trick, and the quiet words of encouragement. They helped a little, breaking through the initial shell of fear. But the moment of truth, action, still proved insurmountable. During a particularly difficult afternoon, Mr. Henderson had given up on close-ups for the day and moved on to a wider shot, hoping the distance might help Billy. Billy was still stiff, his lines delivered mechanically, his eyes wide with fear. Elvis was in the scene too, standing a few feet from Billy. Delivering his own lines with effortless charm, he watched Billy struggle, his heart aching for the kid. He knew what it was like to disappoint people, to feel the weight of expectation. They were doing another take. The camera was whirring, the lights were blazing. Billy was supposed to be listening intently to Elvis's character, his face showing a mix of awe and slight confusion. Instead, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Elvis delivered his line, "So you see, son, it ain't about the gold, it's about the journey." He looked at Billy, waiting for his reaction. Billy's eyes were fixed, unfocused. In that instant, an idea, crazy and spontaneous, bloomed in Elvis's mind. He had to be subtle, quick, and completely unnoticeable to the camera. His eyes met Billy's. As he finished his line, just as the camera was meant to hold on Billy for his reaction, Elvis, ever so slightly with only his lower lip and chin, pushed his bottom lip out in a tiny fish-like pout. His eyes remained serious, but the movement of his lip was distinctly, utterly silly. Billy's eyes, fixed on Elvis, widened. He saw it, that tiny, ridiculous pout. It was so unexpected, so out of place for the king of rock and roll and his serious movie character. A little bubble of air escaped Billy's lips, a tiny, surprised giggle. It was almost silent, just a puff, but it was there, and his face, for that one fleeting second, relaxed. The terror vanished, replaced by genuine amusement. Elvis, seeing the effect, held the pose for another fraction of a second, then subtly shifted his expression back to serious, as if he'd never done anything. "Cut!" Mr. Henderson yelled. "Okay, that was a little better, Billy. You almost had it there. What was that little sound?" Billy clamped his mouth shut, suddenly self-conscious. He glanced at Elvis, who gave him an almost imperceptible wink. "Just clearing my throat, Mr. Henderson," Billy mumbled quickly, looking down at his shoes. Mr. Henderson shrugged, already moving on. "All right, let's try it again, Billy. Just relax into it. You are almost there." They reset the scene. The camera started rolling again. Billy felt the familiar panic rise. But this time, when Elvis delivered his line and looked at him, Billy was ready. Elvis's bottom lip began to protrude again, even more pronounced this time, and his right eye gave a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch. Billy bit his lip, trying to suppress the laughter, but a small smile escaped, flickering across his face. It was genuine, fleeting, and utterly captivating. "Cut," Mr. Henderson said, sounding a little more hopeful this time. "There, that's it, Billy. That's the look. Just a little more open. Where did that come from?" Billy didn't answer, just kept his eyes on Elvis, who was now carefully picking at an imaginary piece of lint on his sleeve, his face a picture of innocence. "Okay, let's do it again." Mr. Henderson was energized. "We're almost there." And so it began. Take after take. As the camera rolled, Elvis would find a subtle way to make Billy laugh. Sometimes it was the fish face. Sometimes it was a cross-eyed glance so fleeting it seemed like a trick of the light. Sometimes, when his hands were free, he'd use his thumb to flatten his nose or wiggle his ears. Each time, just as the moment of panic threatened to overwhelm Billy, Elvis would deliver his silly face precisely timed, just out of camera shot. Or so quick and subtle that only Billy would notice. Billy's face, instead of freezing in fear, would soften. A small smile, a flicker of amusement, a tiny giggle would escape him. The fear was still there, but it was being pushed back little by little, by surprise and genuine mirth. By the end of the day, they had gotten more usable takes from Billy than in the entire week combined. Mr. Henderson was scratching his head, bewildered but thrilled. Billy was exhausted, but felt a new sense of hope blossoming in his chest. And Elvis, watching the boy leave with his mom, a faint but real smile on his face, knew he had found the key. Operation Silly Face was officially a go. The next morning, Elvis arrived on set before call time. A rare occurrence for him, he found Mr. Henderson in a corner, poring over the previous day's rushes, a small, triumphant smile on his face. "Morning, Mr. Henderson," Elvis greeted, his voice low. The director looked up, surprised. "Elvis, early bird, huh? Say, what exactly happened with Billy yesterday? He suddenly started giving us gold. It was like magic." Elvis leaned against a stack of equipment boxes, trying to look casual. "Well, sir, I got an idea. Maybe a crazy one, but it seemed to work." He lowered his voice. "It's about Billy and those cameras. He's got a real phobia deep down." Mr. Henderson nodded, his smile fading. "I know. Kid's a natural, but he just clams up when the lens points at him. It's costing us a fortune." "Right?" Elvis said. "So yesterday, I noticed that if I could get him to laugh even just for a second, right as the camera was rolling, it broke the spell. It made him forget the camera and just react." Mr. Henderson raised an eyebrow. "You were making funny faces, weren't you?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his tone. Elvis grinned, a flash of white teeth. "Maybe, just a little. Nothing. The camera could see, of course, just enough for Billy." The director considered this, stroking his chin. "And you think this could work for the whole picture? You're willing to perform for Billy during takes?" "If it helps the kid and gets the movie made, absolutely," Elvis replied without hesitation. "Subtle. Just off camera. He'll be looking at my character anyway, so it's easy enough to time. It helps him forget himself, helps him be natural." Mr. Henderson looked at Elvis, truly looked at him. This wasn't just a movie star trying to get ahead. This was genuine kindness. "Well, Elvis, I've tried everything else. It's unorthodox, but all right. Let's try Operation Silly Face." He even managed a small smile, finding humor in the absurdity of it. And so the new strategy was implemented. During the first scene of the day, a simple two-shot where Billy's character looked up at Elvis with admiration. Elvis got into position. The cameras rolled. Billy's eyes started to widen, the fear creeping back. Elvis delivered his line. "You got a good heart, son. Never lose that." As he said that, his tongue subtly poked out the side of his mouth, just for a split second, unseen by the camera, but perfectly visible to Billy. Billy's jaw, which had been clenching, relaxed. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, and his eyes and head as being wide, fear. "Sup it is," Mr. Henderson yelled, more excited than he been. A quick, cross-eyed gaze, a barely there wiggle of his eyebrows, a sudden exaggerated sniff that made his nose scrunch up, a silent fish kiss. Each one was perfectly timed, delivered with a precision that would make a seasoned comedian proud. Billy began to anticipate them. Before each take, he would subtly glance at Elvis, a silent question in his eyes. Elvis would respond with a tiny nod, a playful glint in his own blue eyes, letting Billy know he was ready. The fear didn't vanish entirely, but it was now overlaid with anticipation, with a secret amusement. Camera became less of a terrifying entity and more of a nuisance. He had to get past to see what silly thing Elvis would do. The change in Billy was astonishing. His performances became more natural, more engaging. He was still a little stiff, But the tears and the frozen moments were gone. He was reacting, he was present, and most importantly, he was acting. Crew noticed the shift, though they weren't quite sure why. They saw the kid who had been on the verge of being replaced suddenly performing. They saw Elvis, the biggest star in the world, spending extra time with the child actor, whispering jokes and making him laugh between takes. They didn't know about the secret faces, but they saw the bond forming the way Billy's face would light up when Elvis entered a room. By the end of the week, Billy wasn't dreading coming to set. He was actually looking forward to it, not just for the acting which he still loved, but for the moments with Elvis, for the unspoken connection, and for the secret giggles that helped him conquer his fear. One silly face at a time. The soundstage, once a place of terror, was slowly transforming into a place of unexpected fun, all thanks to a king and his goofy grins. As the weeks turned into months, the film shoot became a well-oiled machine, and at its heart was the unlikely, heartwarming partnership between Elvis and Billy. The silly face operation was still in full swing, but it had evolved. It was no crutch anymore, but a gentle nudge, a secret shared between two friends. Their bond wasn't just confined to the film set. During lunch breaks, Elvis would often invite Billy to his trailer. It was a cozy space, filled with guitars, records, and an air of relaxed comfort that was a stark contrast to the busy set. Billy would sit on the plush sofa, wide-eyed as Elvis strummed a tune or told stories. "You know," Billy, Elvis said one afternoon, picking a bluesy riff on his acoustic guitar, "when I first started out, before all this movie stuff and the big shows, I was scared every single time I walked on stage. My knees would knock so loud I thought the audience could hear him." Billy, who was carefully trying to balance a stack of sugar cubes, looked up, surprised. "Really? You never look scared?" "Oh, I was," Elvis chuckled. "Still am sometimes. It's that feeling like everyone's watching, waiting for you to mess up. Takes a real mental trick to get past it." He put the guitar down. "What is it about those cameras, son, that spooks you so bad?" Billy hesitated, then confessed, "It feels like they're looking right inside my head, like they can see everything I'm thinking, even the bad stuff. And if I mess up, everyone will see it forever." He fidgeted with his hands. "It's like they're judging me. I understand that feeling from me. It was always the expectation, being Elvis Presley, the guy who never makes a mistake. The thing is, Billy, nobody's perfect. Everybody messes up. The cameras just record what's there, good or bad. They don't judge you, they just show it. The trick is to remember why you're here. You love acting right. You love telling stories." Billy's face lit up. "Yes, more than anything, I love pretending to be someone else, feeling what they feel." "Exactly." Elvis clapped his hands softly. "So, when that camera's rolling, don't think about the camera. Think about the story. Think about your character. What are they doing right now? What are they feeling? Forget the lens, remember the life he used himself. Before a take, when they're setting up, take a deep breath. Slow in through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel your body relax." Billy tried it, inhaling deeply, feeling his small chest expand. "Good now. Another one. And as you breathe out, imagine all that fear, all that tension, just leaving your body like smoke." They practiced it together. Elvis made it a game, telling Billy to imagine the fear turning into a silly cloud shape, a dinosaur, a flying pig as it floated away. He also taught Billy to focus on a small, unmoving point just above the camera lens. Don't look directly into the lens. Look just above it or just past it. That way you're still connecting with the camera, but it doesn't feel like it's looking into your soul. Billy absorbed every word, every tip. He was beginning to see the camera, not as an enemy, but as a tool, an extension of the storytelling. The fear still gave him a jolt, but it was no longer a paralyzing force. It was more like a persistent buzz, something he could acknowledge. And then, with Elvis's help and his own newfound techniques, push aside. The crew observed these sessions with quiet respect. They saw how Elvis, despite his superstar status, took genuine interest in the child. He wasn't just a colleague. He was a mentor, a friend. They started calling him Uncle Elvis to Billy, a nickname that stuck, reflecting the easy familial warmth he brought to the set. Billy's acting continued to flourish. He was no longer just going through the motions. He was truly inhabiting. His character, his eyes, once full of terror, now held depth and emotion. And every now and then, as the camera rolled, a quick, almost imperceptible twitch of Elvis's eye, or a tiny silent puff of his cheeks, would remind Billy of their shared secret, bringing a genuine, easy smile to his fear overcome and a friendship blooming. The movie production moved into its third month, and the dynamic between Elvis and Billy was one of the most heartwarming aspects on set. Elvis's silly face routine was still there, but it had become more of a comfort signal than a necessity. Billy was growing more confident, more relaxed in front of the camera, able to use the breathing techniques and focusing tricks Elvis had taught him. Now, Elvis added another layer to his mentorship: direct, quiet encouragement. Between takes, he would often lean down and whisper to Billy, "That last bit where you looked at the dog, that was fantastic, Billy. Real, genuine curiosity. That's what we want." Or after a particularly challenging line delivery, "You got that whole paragraph out without a hitch, and you made it sound like you just thought of it. That's acting right there, son." He praised Billy's effort, his resilience, his growing courage. It wasn't just about the finished performance. It was about the journey. This made Billy feel valued not just as an actor, but as a person. There was one scene where Billy's character had to look genuinely upset, close to tears after being told some bad news. It was a tough one for Billy. He worried about being able to cry on cue, about truly feeling sad. "Don't force it, Billy," Elvis advised during the setup. "Just think about something that makes you a little sad, but don't let it overwhelm you. And then when Mr. Henderson says action, let a little bit of that feeling out." Billy nodded, trying to focus. He thought about leaving his puppy behind when he came to Hollywood, a familiar pang of longing. Camera rolling. Billy took a deep breath. He started his line, his voice a little wobbly. He tried to let the sadness come, but the pressure of the camera, even with all his progress, still made him stiffen. He felt his eyes burn, but no tears came. Elvis was just out of shot, his character already having delivered the bad news. He looked at Billy, a quiet, reassuring presence. Then, just as Billy's eyes were about to get stuck in that familiar frozen stare, crossed them, and then slowly, exaggeratedly brought them back to normal, all while maintaining a serious and character expression on his face. Billy saw it, the absurdity of it, the sheer unexpectedness hit him. Tiny snort of laughter escaped him. A sound quickly stifled the immediate fear. The mental block broke. He suddenly felt a surge of emotion, a mix of amusement and frustration at the difficult scene and the underlying sadness he was supposed to portray, and then, surprisingly, the tears came. Real tears born from a mix of everything, but not from terror. They rolled down his cheeks, genuine and affecting. He finished his lines, his voice thick with emotion. "Cut! Oh my word, Billy, that was incredible," Mr. Henderson exclaimed, genuinely impressed. "That was absolutely perfect. The way you went from almost laughing to crying, that was brilliant." Billy wiped his eyes, feeling a rush of exhilaration. He'd done it. He looked at Elvis, who gave him a discreet thumbs up and a wide, private grin. It wasn't about the silly face making him cry. It was about the silly face breaking the mental barrier, allowing the real emotion to surface. The crew was buzzing. They didn't know the secret, but they saw the transformation. They saw a nervous child becoming a powerful young actor. They saw Elvis the King dedicating himself to helping this kid. Their respect for Elvis grew even deeper. He wasn't just a star. He was a kind, empathetic human being. The nickname Uncle Elvis became a common term of endearment on set. It reflected the way Elvis effortlessly bridged the gap between superstar and caring guardian. For Billy, it meant everything. He knew he wasn't just an actor in a film. He was a person being looked after, guided, and genuinely cared for, and with that security, his talent truly began to shine. The atmosphere on set shifted as they approached the most pivotal scene for Billy's character. It was a long emotional monologue delivered directly to the camera, requiring a level of raw vulnerability that would challenge even an experienced adult actor. Billy's character had to confront a deep secret, expressing fear, anger, and ultimately, a glimmer of hope. Mr. Henderson had spent days preparing for this. He wanted absolute silence. There would be no background action, no other actors to play off. It was just Billy, the lights in the unblinking eye of the camera. Billy felt the familiar knot in his stomach tighten into a ball of lead. All the progress he'd made, all the confidence he'd gained, felt fragile. This was different. This was just him. No Elvis to share the scene, with no other characters to divert his attention. And a close-up meaning the camera would be right there, scrutinizing every nuance of his face. Elvis, understanding the weight of the moment, spent extra time with Billy before the shoot. They found a quiet corner, away from the pre-take hustle. "This is a big one," Billy Elvis said, his voice serious but gentle. "This is where you show everyone what you're truly capable of. You know these lines, right?" Billy nodded, clutching his script. "Yes, sir. I've practiced them 100 times." "Good. Now remember what we talked about," Elvis continued. "Don't think about the camera. Think about your character. What's he feeling right now? What's he trying to say?" He looked directly into Billy's eyes. "This isn't about making a silly face, Billy. This is about you. You've come so far. You're brave. You're talented. And you can do this." Billy listened, trying to absorb the words, to let them sink in. "Now, I'll be here," Elvis said, gesturing to a spot just out of the camera's view, near the lens. "You won't see me for the whole take, because you'll be focused. But right before Mr. Henderson calls action, I'll give you our signal, the one we practiced." Their signal was a subtle one. Elvis would give a small, quick nod, then slowly open and close his hand, once. It was a silent message. "Ready, you got this. I'm here." "When you see that," Elvis explained, "don't think about me. Don't think about the camera. Just take your big breath, remember your character, and then let it all out." "Okay," Billy took a shaky breath. "Okay." The lights were already in position, creating a dramatic, almost theatrical glow around Billy's mark. Mr. Henderson was unusually quiet, his expression serious. "All right, Billy," Mr. Henderson said, his voice hushed. "Whenever you're ready, remember, take your time, feel it." Billy walked to his mark. He stood there feeling the heat of the lights, the presence of the camera, looming like a silent, expectant observer. His heart was hammering. He searched for Elvis. Elvis was in his designated spot, just a few feet away. He caught Billy's eye, and then he gave the signal. The small, quick nod followed by the slow, deliberate open and close of his hand. His gaze was steady, unwavering, filled with belief. Billy saw it. The simple gesture, a symbol of their shared journey, seemed to anchor him. He took the deep breath Elvis had taught him, imagining the fear as a wisp of smoke, drifting away. Closed his eyes for a second, then opened them, focusing on the story, on his character's pain. Camera rolling, the familiar whir filled the air. Billy felt the pressure, the intense focus of the lens. His throat tightened. He was about to freeze. He felt it, but then he remembered Elvis's words. "Core, brave, you're talented. You can do this." He opened his mouth. His voice was shaky at first, but then it grew stronger. Imbued with genuine emotion, the monologue began. This was it, the biggest test yet. The first few lines of Billy's monologue were delivered with a visible tremble. He was trying to push through, but the immense pressure of the close-up, the unblinking eye of the camera, seemed to magnify every shred of his lingering fear. His eyes darted nervously, then settled fixated on some unseen point just above the camera lens. Just as Elvis had taught him, he faltered on a line, a small stammer. Mr. Hender to see if Billy could recover on his own. Billy's mind flashed to Elvis just out of sight, and the steady, believing look in his eyes during their signal. He took another silent, deep breath, remembering the smoke of fear dissipating. Closed his eyes for a split second, reconnected with the deep emotion of his character, and opened them again. This time, when he spoke, his voice was different, stronger, more resonant. The fear wasn't gone, but it was being channeled, transmuted into the raw vulnerability the scene required. He wasn't acting scared of the camera anymore. He was acting scared as his character. The words poured out, filled with a power that surprised even Mr. Henderson. Billy's face contorted in pain, then anger, then a profound sadness. A single tear, real and unbidden, tracked a path down his cheek, followed by another. His body language, once stiff with terror, now flowed with genuine emotion. He delivered the final hopeful line with a quiet strength that was truly captivating. Silence hung in the air for a full 3 seconds. After Billy finished, the only sound, the gentle whir of the camera. Then slowly Mr. Henderson lowered his hand. "Cut," he breathed, his voice barely above a whisper, laced with awe. He didn't immediately call for another take. He simply stood there staring at Billy, a wide, incredulous smile spreading across his face. Crew, who had been holding their breath, let out a collective sigh of relief, followed by quiet murmurs of admiration. Elvis, who had been watching from his unseen vantage point, walked into view. He didn't say anything. He just strode directly to Billy, a huge, proud grin on his face. He knelt down, pulling Billy into a tight hug. "You did it, son," Elvis whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You absolutely did it. That was magnificent." Billy, still trembling from the intensity of the scene, clung to Elvis. He felt a wave of relief wash over him, so potent it made his legs weak. He had faced his biggest fear directly, head on, and he had won. He hadn't been perfect, but he had been real. I really did it," Billy asked, his voice still shaky, tears of relief now mixing with the character's tears. "You more than did it, Billy," Mr. Henderson said, coming over, his eyes shining. He clapped Billy on the shoulder. "That was some of the best acting I've seen on this set. You found it, son. You absolutely found it." In that moment, standing between the director's praise and Elvis's proud embrace, something shifted profoundly within Billy. Camera, which had been a monster, a judgmental eye, now seemed to transform. It was no longer staring at him, but listening. It wasn't judging him. It was simply there, ready to capture the magic he could create. He looked at the lens, really looked at it without flinching. It was just a machine, a very expensive machine, but a machine nonetheless. Power it held wasn't inherent in its glass and metal. It was the power he gave it, and with Elvis's help, he had taken that power back. The fear wasn't completely gone. He knew it might still whisper to him from time to time, but it was no longer the deafening roar it once was. It was a manageable sound, something he could acknowledge, and then with newfound confidence ignore. He had broken through. He was an actor, truly, unequivocally an actor. And the camera was no longer his enemy, but his silent, essential partner in storytelling. The last few weeks of filming flew by in a blur of successful takes and deepening camaraderie. Billy, having conquered his camera fear, was now a joy to work with. His performances were consistently strong, his confidence radiating. The silly face was practically retired, only making a rare, nostalgic appearance when Elvis felt Billy needed a little extra boost, or simply wanted to share a private laugh. As the final day of shooting approached, a bittersweet feeling settled over the cast and crew. They had formed a family, bound by the shared experience of creating something special, and by the unique bond that had formed between their superstar lead and their brave young actor. On the very last day after the final scene wrapped and the customary applause erupted, the crew organized a small farewell party on the soundstage. Pizza boxes were stacked high. Soft drinks flowed, and laughter echoed through the space that had once held so much tension. Mr. Henderson made a short speech, praising the hard work of everyone, and singling out Billy for his incredible transformation. "Billy, you showed us all what true courage looks like," he said, his voice warm. "You pushed past your fears and you delivered a performance that will move audiences for years to come. We're all incredibly proud of you." Billy, beaming, thanked the director and the crew. He felt a pang of sadness, knowing this chapter was closing. Then his eyes found Elvis, who was standing nearby, a comfortable smile on his face. Billy took a deep breath, and with a courage he hadn't possessed just months ago, he walked over to Elvis. "Uncle Elvis?" Billy said, his voice clear and confident, echoing slightly in the vast space. "Can I say something?" Elvis raised an eyebrow, a surprised but welcoming look on his face. "Sure thing, son. What's on your mind?" Billy turned back to face the gathering crowd, then looked directly at Elvis. I wanted to thank you, Uncle Elvis, for everything. For helping me not be scared anymore. For the magic tricks." He paused, a mischievous glint in his eye. "And for the silly faces." A ripple of quiet laughter went through the crew. They didn't know the full extent of the silly face operation, but they knew Elvis had somehow been the key to Billy's breakthrough. Elvis chuckled, a warm, genuine sound. "Anytime, kid. You earned it." He took a step closer to Elvis, looked him squarely in the eye, and without a single word, he slowly pushed out his bottom lip in a perfect imitation of Elvis's signature. Fish face. He even added a slight exaggerated cross of his eyes. A stunned silence fell over the small crowd, followed by an explosion of laughter. Elvis, completely taken by surprise, roared with laughter, a booming, joyful sound that filled the sound stage. He clapped Billy on the back, shaking his head in amusement and pure delight. "Well, I'll be," Elvis exclaimed, wiping a tear of laughter from his eye. "You learned well, didn't you, son?" "You learned real well." He ruffled Billy's hair, his affection clear. "You know, Billy, it ain't just the acting, it's what you did, deep down inside, to face that fear. That's what's gonna stick with you always." Billy nodded, feeling a warmth spread through him. He knew Elvis was right. He wouldn't forget this. He wouldn't forget the long hours, the frustration, the tears, or the moment Elvis had looked at him with understanding. He wouldn't forget the silly faces that had been a lifeline as the party wound down. Elvis promised to keep in touch. "You got my number, Billy. You call me anytime you need anything. Or, if you just want to shoot the breeze." Billy clutched a piece of paper with Elvis's personal phone number, a priceless treasure. He hugged Elvis one last time, a tight embrace that spoke volumes. The movie was done, but the friendship forged in shared fear and unexpected silliness was just beginning. And Billy knew, deep in his heart, that this experience had changed him forever, not just as an actor, but as a person. Years passed, bringing with them countless movie roles, growing fame, and the passage of time that changes everything. Billy Jenkins was no longer a scared 10-year-old. He was a confident, accomplished young actor, celebrated for his natural talent and magnetic screen presence. He moved effortlessly between dramatic roles and comedies, always delivering performances that resonated with audiences. Camera, once his terrifying enemy, was now simply a part of his world, an extension of his craft. He still thought of Elvis often. Their friendship had indeed continued, though life's demands meant calls and visits were less frequent than they used to be. But the impact Elvis had on Billy's life was immeasurable, a guiding light that went far beyond the movie set. One crisp autumn morning, Billy, now a young man of 20, found himself on a new film set, a bustling modern production. He was the lead, and a new child actor, a boy around 10 or 11, was playing his younger self in flashback scenes. Billy watched the boy, Timmy, from across the set. Timmy was clearly talented, but there was a stiffness about him, a wary glance he kept casting at the cameras whenever they were being prepped. Billy saw the familiar signs, the clenched jaw, the slightly wide eyes, the way he seemed to shrink under the glare of the lights. He knew that look. It was his own past staring back at him. During a break, Billy saw Timmy's frustrated director call for a moment away, just as Mr. Henderson had done for him all those years ago. Timmy walked off, looking defeated, his mother trying to comfort him. Billy approached them slowly, a gentle smile on his face. "Hey, Timmy," he said, his voice calm and friendly. "Mind if I borrow you for a second?" Timmy looked up, surprised to be addressed by the film's star. No, sir." Billy led him to a quiet corner, much like Elvis had done for him. "Tough day, huh?" he asked, sitting down beside him. Timmy nodded, his eyes downcast. I can't do it. The camera. It feels like it's just staring at me, judging me." Billy smiled warmly. "I know exactly how that feels to me. I used to be just like you, completely terrified of the camera." Timmy's eyes widened, looking at Billy, who was so poised and comfortable in front of the lens. "You were?" "Oh, absolutely," Billy confirmed. "Worse than you, even for weeks. I couldn't get a single shot without bursting into tears." He paused, then pulled a shiny silver dollar from his pocket. "Want to see something cool?" Timmy's face brightened, just as Billy's had years ago. Billy did the classic disappearing coin trick, then pulled it from behind Timmy's ear. Timmy gasped, then let out a delighted laugh, a genuine unburdened sound. "How did you do that?" Timmy exclaimed, completely distracted from his earlier distress. Billy chuckled. "That's a secret between me and a very wise friend who taught it to me a long time ago. He taught me a lot of things, actually, including how to make peace with these big, scary eyes." He gestured subtly toward the cameras. "He told me to think of them not as judges, but as listeners," Billy explained, his voice softening. "They just want to hear your story. And sometimes," he lowered his voice conspiratorially, "sometimes when you're really scared, you just gotta remind yourself that they're just machines, and machines can be fooled." Timmy leaned in fascinated. "He used to make me laugh," Billy confessed, a fond memory bringing a private smile to his face. "Just before a take, he'd do something silly just for me. Just out of sight, it broke the spell. Made me forget about the fear for a second, and then I could just act." Timmy considered this, looking from Billy to the cameras, a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not fear, but curiosity. "So here's what we're going to do," Billy said, his voice full of the easy, confident mentorship he'd learned from the best. "Before your next take, when you look at me, you watch closely. Just before Mr. Davies calls action, I might just give you a little something to remember." He gave Timmy a wink. "Our little secret. Okay, just between you, me, and a very wise old friend of mine." Timmy grinned, a genuine hopeful smile. The weight seemed to lift from his small shoulders. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a secret. He had a friend. And for the first time, the cameras didn't look quite so terrifying. Billy watched Timmy walk back to the set, a newfound lightness in his step. He remembered Elvis, not just the superstar, but the man who had seen a scared kid and chosen kindness. He'd learned more than acting on that set. He'd learned empathy, generosity, and the profound power of a simple, silly face. As he took his place for the next shot, a quiet, contented smile touched his lips. The legacy lived on.